Yes. Hi, my name is Angela Merkins, and I'm an intern with the Rec Innovation Lab at Miramar College. The Rec Innovation Lab is an educational incubator that provides educational resources, training, network opportunities for founders and for new startup companies. I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Alex Triener. And Alex is a passionate tech entrepreneur who has started 3 tech startup companies here in San Diego. And Alex has raised close to $2 million in funding from angel investors and venture capital groups, and has had a successful Kickstarter campaign that has raised more than $100,000.
Thanks for sharing that. I appreciate getting us started here. And I just wanted to add for everybody who's just joining us, we are just about to get started with the actual workshop. But before we get started, there's a couple of things that, a couple of housekeeping things that I wanted to cover. And there's a poll that we'd love for you to answer the question. Essentially, we'd like to see how many ways that you can think of to get capital for your startup. So think about it a little bit. Think about how many ways you can think of to get money, to get going. And there's a couple of polls that I've also, or surveys that I've also shared, and I'll go ahead and share those again. And these are just, if any of you want to do them later at your leisure, they're to find out a little bit more about the kinds of startups that are getting started here in San Diego. And then the last thing we'll ask of you, there is one more survey that we'll complete at the end, and that's just a feedback form for us at the Rec and for Alex to let us know what you thought. So with that, I will stop talking your ear off, and I'll pass it over to the expert, Alex, who will take it away from there.
Well, thanks for having me. Tanya, when are you going to share the results of the survey? I'm just curious.
This survey, the poll, whenever you tell me to share the results.
Let's do this now. Let's just
go ahead and do it. Okay.
There's a hint on the screen here, but let's see.
Okay. Well, let me see if anybody else wants to quickly take the poll. Have any more respondents? Okay. I'm going to go ahead and close this here shortly. So I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, and let's see if we can see what those results are.
All right. Okay. So we have 63% of participants said that there are only 2 to 4 ways to fund your startup. It's great. You're in for a big surprise. All right. So our goal today is to give you kind of a broad overview without getting into details. Although I do have some tips along the way, but it's just give you kind of a broad spectrum of different avenues, so you guys be aware of this. Okay. Let's see. All right. So although, thank you so much, Angela, again, for introducing me. The reason for this self-intro here is just to show my credibility in those fields, right? So I've co-founded 3 startups. I had this one successful exit to a Fortune 100 company with Pet Wireless. I've raised $2 million in funding from these different sources, which is angel investors, corporate VC fund, Launch Factory in San Diego, it's a startup studio, Kickstarter, and also I got a National Science Foundation grant. So some of the things that I'm going to talk about, I actually know them. I have a first-hand experience. And I also been in 4 incubators or accelerators, 3 of them in San Diego, even Nexus, I guess everybody knows them, I hope. Start are at UCSD Radio School of Management, Springboard at Connect, and there's another one in Denver called Tech Riot. All right, so this is a 30,000-foot view on funding options, and if you guys can count, you can count here exactly 8 of them. So I hope it's surprising. So there's a donation-based crowdfunding. There are grants available. There's reward-based crowdfunding, equity-based crowdfunding. There are startups accelerators that help you fundraise. Of course, angel investors. There are business loans that I'm not sure everybody aware of them. And finally, ultimately, it's venture capital. So I am advocating for so-called a staged or phased fundraising strategy where you start, at least first few steps. You start with a donation crowdfunding campaign on GoFundMe to get to some kind of a demonstrable prototype. And I will elaborate a little bit more about GoFundMe. But people on GoFundMe, they fund your mission and they fund you personally, so they don't really care about if you have anything as a product. So you don't have to have anything prepared. Once you've raised a little bit of capital, you can use it maybe in combination with a little bit of your own funds to actually work and prepare a real prototype. which would be in a much better shape, which you could record videos of and take pictures or so. And then you can go to stage 3 and you can launch a reward crowdfunding campaign such as Kickstarter or Indiegogo. In parallel, you should be applying for a grant if your startup allows for this, and we'll talk about this. And finally, once you've had a successful reward crowdfunding campaign, then in order for you to grow and to continue the development and recruit a team, you have 3 options. Some of them could be pursued, actually, all of them could be pursued in parallel. One is you can apply to a startup accelerator, you can start pitching to individual angel investors, or you could launch an equity crowdfunding campaign. So that's kind of a big picture of everything. So again, to sum up here, 8 different options for fundraising. And actually there's like a timeline here, or at least kind of a roadmap. So you don't do everything at once. So let's talk a little bit about donation-based crowdfunding. So GoFundMe is the world's #1 crowdfunding platform. It's insane. It's larger than Kickstarter and Indiegogo combined. They help people raise more than $10 billion with a B for by far more than 120 million backers. It's very, very impressive. And this company actually was founded in San Diego by 2 co-founders. One of them is Andy Ballester, who happens to be our advisor to our company, Productified. So what are the pros and cons for GoFundMe? First of all, let's talk about pros. It costs you nothing. You don't even need to set up a legal entity. Like if you raise money from investors, they want to get some shares in your company, so you need to have a legal entity. For GoFundMe, nothing at all. It is incredibly quick and easy to set up a campaign. And if you partner up with us, we will provide you with a playbook for GoFundMe. The capital that you're raising is non-dilutive, meaning that it's basically money you can use for anything, and you don't have to give anything in return now or in the future. There will be accountability to your family and your friends and your social networks that will back you, right? But it's actually a good thing because it keeps you honest and it keeps you in check. And finally, as I already mentioned, there's no need to have any working prototype or even any business idea or disclose your business idea, because donors will support you and your mission. All you need to have is to have a good, well-formulated mission and have a charming personality so your social networks will like you. And I don't see any cons here. Any disadvantages. So the next stage are grants. So this is kind of a roadmap how to do grant. I'm not an expert. I only got 1 grant and I got denied 1 grant. So I have a 50% success rate today. I've raised $180,000 from the National Science Foundation. So I'm not going to go over these steps. I'm kind of obvious. But so here are a few examples of agencies that actually you can go and look for grants. You can do everything online. You don't need help, but it would be nice to have help. So it's NIH and the National Institute of Health with a budget of over $30 billion, National Science Foundation, about $13 billion, DOD, Department of Defense, of Energy, DARPA, and so forth. But outside of government agencies, there are also private nonprofits, like for instance, Gary and Mary West Foundation in San Diego. They also grant money. So what is the pros and cons here? Oh, sorry. I'm going to go back. So okay. Yeah, oh, all right, back here. So the pros are grants give you non-dilutive capital as well. And it's also a very significant capital. On GoFundMe, usually the amounts are small. It depends, of course, on how powerful your social networks are. But grant you can get from the National Science Foundation, for instance, or NIH, $1.5 to $2 million over 2 phases. It's an incredible amount. And then as you continue raising money from investors, they actually match your funds 50 cents on the dollar, so you can go even beyond $2 million. Cons are it's a lot of work, but so raising money from many investors. It is a pretty long lead time, so usually it takes months to hear back from them, many months. And it's highly competitive. You know, usually it's like 1 out of 10 or that order of magnitude. But, you know, even when you raise capital from investors, it's also very competitive as well. However, you know, you must have a legal entity in place. So it will cost you some upfront legal and government fees, you know, to pay your state tax or whatever it takes, right? And legal, if you go to an attorney, it may take, you know, cost you about $2,000. If you do it yourself with one of those online, few hundreds of dollars. So those are grants. So my recommendation, if you think that you are qualified for a grant for whatever reason, for, you know, your technology or your mission, you should absolutely do it. It's a long shot, but it's absolutely worth it. So then reward crowdfunding. Everybody heard of Kickstarter and Indiegogo. So you start there, and then Indiegogo actually has a thing, it's called in demand. Meaning that if you had a successful campaign on one of those, it doesn't have to be Indiegogo. You can continue your campaign. After it's finished, usually those campaigns go on for 30 to 60 days. But once you finish your campaign, you can still keep your product and move it over to Indiegogo in demand and continue pre-sales, which is, you know, you can actually, I saw companies make as much as they did on the campaign itself or even more. So these are two examples of a crowdfunding campaign specifically for apps, because Kickstarter has a very strict limit. They only allow you to raise capital for a tangible product. It's a reward-based. Indiegogo allows you to do apps, but people are not so much into apps there. So you usually would go to one of those. So pros is it's a non-dilutive capital as well. So you don't give away any equity in your company, but you do give away your product. Well, pre-sell your product. It could be a very significant capital, from tens of thousands of dollars to millions, and some runaway campaigns raised way over $10 million. It's just insane. And it's a good thing. It proves traction to yourself and to your prospective investors. It means that you build a product, you put it online, and people bought it. What's better than that proof of your business? Here are the disadvantages. First of all, it is a lot of work, but again, it's any fundraising, it's a lot of work. If campaign fails, for whatever reason, if campaign was unsuccessful, it stays there in the public domain forever. And once you start pitching to investors and they do due diligence, they will find it. So you better disclose it, and it may or may not harm your chances of getting investment. Another thing people are concerned about, and I honestly thought it's just paranoia, but I've heard actually horror stories. So I can tell you it's not just paranoia. So you're publicly disclosing your product when your product is not fully baked yet. So you're like, after you finish your campaign, usually it takes at least a few months to get ready for mass production, because you still need to tie some loose ends and so forth. And we know that largest, well-established companies, they basically troll these websites, and if they see successful campaigns with some product, and if this product is within their either area of expertise of production, of development, manufacturing, or marketing and sales, they would go for it. Even if you have a patent, they would just copycat it, and they would generate so much in sales before you even blink. So that's a big thing to think about. Of course, it's great to have a patent, but the patent may not stop them. Also, it requires some significant upfront costs for marketing and prototype development, and that's why we're advocating for a phased approach, where you go on GoFundMe, you raise a little bit, and you use those funds to do just these things. You also need to offer significant discounts, usually measured in tens of percent, up to 50%, and it would hurt your margins. Also, unfortunately, even though I just said that your successful campaign would prove traction, but it does not prove pricing. So your investors would usually still challenge you, say, hey, you just sold at a discount at 50%. It doesn't mean that people will still buy it at your full price. So your unit economics that you put in here in your pitch deck and showing me doesn't mean much to me, right? You don't have a proof. And then you need to be aware they take some significant fees, but it's worth it, right? It's 5% platform fee plus usually 2.9% processing fees. So it's about around 8%, but again, it's not a big deal. Okay, so then startup accelerators. I guess everybody heard of them. I dropped some names. So world's top accelerators are Y Combinator, Techstars, that I also have here I think they at least used to be here in San Diego, and 500 startups. So this is kind of a quick screenshot of their process. I'm not going to go into this, but it's very, very competitive to get there. And it culminates in what they call a demo day, where investors flock in and you go and you pitch and you have, lots of adrenaline through your veins. I've gone through this. It's been very exciting. I've pitched in Denver, I've pitched in San Diego, I've pitched in Silicon Valley. So what are the pros of this? Well, first of all, you do learn a lot. It's a very intense process. It makes it really easier for you to raise capital because they organize demo days and road shows, and they take care of bringing investors in. You don't need to worry about it. The only thing you need to worry about is your pitch. It also gives you credibility because these are so competitive, and people that are so professional in their selection committee, that just by virtue of being selected, you're already somebody. But then if you've gone through this successfully, then it's even more credibility, and you get some PR, some significant PR out of this, and it's kind of a validation. And you get pretty nice network of of your peers, other entrepreneurs, mentors, advisors, and investors. What are the disadvantages here? So one is usually these programs go somewhere between 2 to 6 months, and you have to move there. So you gotta move up to Silicon Valley or Denver, Colorado, or something like that, or whatever place that is. So it must be distracting. It might be distracting to your personal life, your family, and might be distracting to your business. Okay, again, we're now operating under COVID, so these things are not taking that into the account. I guess it will be remote, so that part kind of drops, right? And you need to be aware that they take significant equity in your company, usually around 5 to 6%. I put here, 1 to 8%. And in exchange, you get a small investment from them upfront, which usually between $20,000 to $120,000. Sometimes it goes all the way to $200,000. Again, this investment comes in here, the very beginning, after you get accepted. This is what they call funding. But this investment is different. It could be whatever you need, right? I mean, millions of dollars if you're there, if you're ready. All right, so the next one is equity crowdfunding platforms. There's tons of them, actually, like more than 20. It's lots of competition between them. And so when you're thinking about this, you need to find a platform that works for you, meaning that, are you B2B or B2C or enterprise? Some platforms are like specific verticals for like drone and enthusiasts and whatnot, right? So some of these names, AngelList, Circle Up, Start Engine. WeFunder is one of the top platforms, and we actually one of their guys, Justin. He is here in San Diego, a really great guy. I recommend you. I'd be happy to make an intro if you'd like. Crowdfunder, and the list goes on and on. So what are the pros? First of all, you can raise as much capital as needed. You basically state the amount up front and you go for it. You don't need to chase any individual investor. All these investors that are there, they are opted in on the platform, and the platform will take care of the email distribution. So you launch your campaign, they send all these emails to all these investors, and investors either invest up front, decide not to invest, or reach out to you with some questions, and then goes into cons that you need to basically commit yourself to this campaign, to this Q&A via email, messaging, and then you jump on Zoom with them and you answer their questions, and sometimes it could be a handful, but again, so raising money from individual investors. However, when you pitch to angel investors, you end up pitching a lot, right? But you kind of eventually, you have like a handful of investors in each round. Say each one gives you $50,000, you're raising $500,000, 10 investors, right? But if you go in one of those platforms, you can end up having actually hundreds of investors. Each one will give you $1,000, a couple $1,000. So you need to be aware of that. So it could be a handful. And their fees are also not insignificant. It's similar to what a broker sometimes takes, which could be up to 10%. Usually a little bit less than that, like 5, 6, 7, 8, but something like that. You just need to account for this. So then there are angel investors. Everybody knows about them, so I'm going to throw a few things here. Who are angel investors? They are high net worth individuals. right? And you kind of mentally you think of them. Some of them are entrepreneurs with successful exits who have money and they basically now get this and love it and invest. Some of them are working professionals which think different, like lawyers, doctors, dentists, veterinarians, and so forth, come to mind. And some of them are just wealthy individuals for whatever reason. They just love doubling into this. So you need to pitch to them and talk to them in differently. And you need to understand who they are and do a little bit of homework. And of course, friends and family always, you always can think of them as angel investors, and you can convert them. So Margaret Thompson, who is now running Evo Nexus, he was my mentor. He taught me that he personally converted. He said, I think some 70% of all angel investors he ever raised capital from were not angel investors before them. He actually turned them from regular people into angel investors by explaining to them what angel investing really is, and basically, like closing them with his value proposition. So there are two types, like one are individual network investors, and there are also networks and organizations such as TCA, Tech Coast Angels here, TAI, which is Indian entrepreneurs, and so forth. There are pros and cons of pitching to individuals versus networks. I'm not going to go into this right now. And they like how much they invest. Like usual amounts are listed here. You're usually 10, 25, 50, 100. There are super angels. Those are really wealthy people that had some incredible exits. Like very heavy millionaires or multi-millionaires, of course. And they invest usually a larger amount per round. And you can, and if you're lucky to find somebody like that, they can become your lead investor. And it's always great to have a lead investor, because investors, as you guys may have heard, they invest in flocks, and if you have one, others will follow. So here are a few tips. Like, first of all, where do you find them? Well, online on AngelList, Crunchbase, and LinkedIn. You also start looking at startups in a similar area that you are, not necessarily competitors, but kind of similar verticals. And you see who sometimes they do list their investors. Sometimes they brag about them on their website. Sometimes they put them on their Crunchbase, or you can find them on LinkedIn, and you can try to pitch to these investors as well. And of course, there's a bunch of networking events such as SDVG San Diego Venture Group. Used to run this great event before they merged with Connect. I don't know where they stand now. I actually just talked to Mike Kren at Connect, who used to be president of SDVG. Now he runs both, but I didn't ask this question. I guess, post-COVID, these events will be back. Now, how to approach them? Think about always warm introductions via email or via LinkedIn. Find somebody, common connection, reach out to them and ask for a warm introduction. Now, you need to decide for yourself on the minimum investment you'd accept, usually not less than 10K, because you're going to end up with lots of investors. And unlike in crowdfunding here, right, we talked about this. So they basically organize all these investors into usually one LLC, and basically you have only one entry in your cap table, on your cap table from this. But here, if you start taking like $2,000 from each investor and you need to raise $1 million, imagine what it's going to be. It's a mess, so you don't want to do that. So there's something to think about. And here is like Silicon Valley angel investors, like a couple of years ago, maybe now it's even different, but a couple of years ago, they were looking for to invest only if you have revenue, only if you have $5,000 to $10,000 monthly recurring revenue, and they wanted to see some few months of revenue history, and they wanted to measure your growth, which would be ideal is 6% weekly, which is really not easy to reach, or at least like 15% month over month. So you need to be aware of that. Okay. Well, there are business loans. People don't know about them. That's not from the banks. So, like, if you go to a bank, you're a startup, nobody will give you a loan, right? It's not a mortgage. There's nothing for you. But there are plenty of brokers today. I feel that in the past, give or take decade, like ever since we've recovered from the 2008 market crash, subprime market crash, there's a new shady thing going on. It's a subprime business loans. I hope it will not bring down our economy, because there are much fewer businesses than individuals that buy houses. But everybody is like pushing their hundreds of thousands of dollars onto you. They say, yeah, you give me a personal guarantee, I can set you up with $200,000 or $100,000 business loan, even if you don't have any revenues. Wow, I don't know what's going on here. I've never explored it, but if you're desperate, you can explore it. Just beware that, personal guarantee is what it is, right? So once you're lucky enough to hit revenue, you must prove your monthly recurring rate to them, and they give you your loan usually in multiples of your monthly recurring rate, like usually like five times your current MRR, for instance. So if you're generating $10,000 in monthly revenue, you can get $50,000 loan on a reasonable terms. The interest rate is somewhere okay, I guess. It depends on the economy, but if you really need it, it's worth it, and it's relatively easy to get, I guess. And then there's a very interesting category for on account receivables. Like if you have a business where your terms of payment, especially if you sell to businesses, if your terms of payment sometimes could be net 60, meaning that after you've made a sale, you get your money back in 60 days, sometimes even in 90 days. It creates a significant cash flow problem for you. And so the way to close this cash flow problem, is to get a loan for your account receivable. Usually these are very short term, like obviously for the term of your cycle, which is like in my example was 60 to 90 days. They bear high interest, but it's better than going out of business. And they bet for profitability because of high interest, but it's still better for your health than for your business health than not to have cash. How to find them? You can do online search. I'm sure you can find plenty of them, or you can just create your business. Set up your business profile on one of these, and these brokers will find you. I get bombarded all the time via mail, and I'm not bragging about it. It's just normal. I guess everybody does. Okay, and finally VCs. So venture capitalists, they invest usually in Series A, majority of them, and so forth, B and C and so forth. So Series A is called a first institutional funding round because VCs are considered to be institutional investors. So I guess majority of you, it's too early in any case. However, there are also so-called seed stage VCs, also known as micro VCs. So if you're looking for those, they can actually invest, and some of them invest even pre-revenue, and some of them say that they're preconditioned, they want to be first. So I don't know, maybe they have some draconian terms. I don't know, I've never explored them. I recently just learned about them myself. So I don't have experience with this. Now, Silicon Valley VCs, out of those who invest in Series A, they're looking for the following. They're looking for 50 to 100,000, maybe now to even $200,000 MRR, monthly recurring revenues, or usually at least, $500,000, usually $1 million to $2 million ARR, annual recurring revenue. They want to have a demonstrable revenue history of at least 6 months, usually a year, right? And they want to see like this revenue growth, like very aggressive. They want to see that you're growing, and they want to call their money, it's a gasoline on the fire. You already have great fire going, you're already generating revenue, so they just basically invest in growth. And so you need to understand those things before you chase after them and waste lots of your time. So here's what time is it now? No, I'm okay. I'm almost done. Yeah, I wanted to leave lots of time for questions. So like 3 more minutes. So here are a few tips. First of all, you got to study almost every VC fund has what they call an investment thesis. Sometimes they advertise it, most of the time they don't. So you can look for this on their website, or it can be derived from researching their portfolio startups. They usually actually do publish on their website. So here are a few things that you want to look at within this thesis. First of all, what investment stage they are. Are they seed, or they Series A, or is it later stage? Sometimes it says seed versus growth. Seed means that you don't have revenues yet. That's what it's seed, right? Growth meaning that you're already growing, because think of yourself as a tree. Then what kind of verticals they invest? Is it a fintech, healthcare, SaaS, or some of them are industry agnostic, some of them love particular technologies, some of them love platform technologies like AI or something. So you need to be aware of this and know very well who you are first, right? Know yourself. Then you need to see, like some of them say we only do enterprise, only B2C, only B2B, and so forth. Some of them have geography limitations, you know, like Bay Area larger firms, they say, you know, we have plenty of fish in the Bay Area pool. Why would we travel for you? So they only invest up there. Some invest in West Coast, some invest locally, and so forth. So you got the point. And then, you know, some of them are, well, majority of them are really picky about founders, because, you know, the common wisdom of experienced investors is they invest, you know, they put 80% of their investment weight into founders. So some of them want to only have experienced founders, and they don't invest in first-time founders. Although you can always make a case that, hey, you know, Zuckerberg and, you know, the Google guys and everybody else, you know, even Bill Gates, you know, was a first-time founder once. But they just don't take this as an argument. You're just wasting your time. So do they want, you know, founders with prior startups, or maybe even with prior exits? That's important. Of course, warm interests are very important. Cold calls don't work. They want to see some sophistication in you. Sophistication means that, first of all, you understand that it's not, you're not selling vacuum cleaners here, right? You're selling yourself and your startup, so you got to have warm interest. And that you are basically savvy enough and you execute by finding those people who will make warm interest for you. And then there's like another nuance, which I wanted to share with you. Some of these usually larger firms, they give you only one shot. Meaning that if you come in premature, if you're not ready yet, they say thanks, but no thanks, and they will never, never, ever take your call or any intro again. So it's important to know who they are and to know what they want. So just to come to them at just at the right time. However, some of them, like for instance, Mark Schuster from LA fund, I forgot which fund, is a great guy. He comes down to San Diego often. I actually happen to know him personally. So he advocates for a relationship. He's a relationship investor. He wants you to come to him and say, hey, I am not ready. I'm not raising right now. I understand I'm not ready. I just wanted to tell you a little bit about what I'm doing and just keep in touch with you. Would that be okay? So he, first of all, you know, as soon as you say I'm not raising now, it kind of removes the pressure. It's so great. You're just having a conversation. You're not asking anybody for money, right? So there's no place to be stressed out for you or for him, even though I don't think he is ever stressed out, by the way. So second is, you know, you just say, hey, I understand what you like. I understand the relationship. I just wanted to introduce myself, tell you about a little bit about my business. And, you know, if you're lucky enough to pick his interest, he will ask you actually for updates. And so you just send him periodic updates, maybe like monthly or quarterly, or when you hit some interesting milestone. And then finally you're ready. Maybe he will tell you, hey, I think it's time we talk again. So that's a little bit wisdom on VCs. Okay, and then finally, like self-promotion here, but it's to help you guys. So I am the co-founder of this company called Productified. It's a platform for home inventors and inexperienced entrepreneurs to help you guys to turn your ideas into products and sales. So what we offer you for absolutely free, it's a concierge service. We're doing it right now for a limited time while we're learning, right? And the only thing we will ever ask of you is if you like our free service, to provide you testimonial so we can put on our website. Here's how we can help you. We can advise you on a staged fundraising strategy based on your business. We can advise you on your product development strategy and then your go-to-market strategy. We can help you like really in details with GoFundMe by giving you a playbook and sharing best practices that we already have customers who are doing this right now. We will advise you, we're not experts, but we will still advise you whether or not it's worth for you to even pursue a grant. And because I have a first-hand experience with one Kickstarter campaign, we can give you advice there. That's pretty much it. Thank you so much for listening. Let's open for Q&A here.
Thank you so much, Alex. I appreciate that, all of that jam-packed advice in there. And I'm sure that there are lots of questions. First of all, Angela, were there any questions in the chat? We'll maybe start there.
I don't believe so at this time.
All right, so I do see one from Martin that just came in. No, it's okay. It was just coming in while you were saying that. And oh, so I'm sorry, maybe it's not Martin. Mateen Farsi said, if we have an app idea, how can we be sure that nobody steals these ideas? I get these kind of questions all the time where people are afraid, Alex, to share their idea in the worries that others will steal the idea. And I have my own, my own opinions on this, but I'd love to hear yours.
Yeah, I think my opinions are going to be like yours. So I'm going to be super blunt and honest with you, just because I want to help you. Like, first of all, keep your paranoia to yourself, because your paranoia show that you're a little bit lack of your experience and understanding how these things work. So it's okay to have paranoias. I understand that. I have utmost respect to it. When I just was a first-time entrepreneur, I probably had even a worse paranoia, right? And it doesn't matter if you have an app or whatever product it is, right? It's normal to have paranoia. Just keep it to yourself. So that's number one. The general wisdom is this: that 99% of success in a business is about execution. It's not about idea. So ideas are worth dime a dozen. You can get up on the tallest building in the world. You can you'll broadcast your idea everywhere on the web. Unless it's like there are very, very few examples when it's actually not advisable. In most cases, you absolutely have to do it because you can't develop your idea in a vacuum. You have to do it surrounded by customers, and so you have to present it to the world anyways, right? And sooner or later, somebody will notice your idea. But guess what? In most cases, people will start noticing your idea when you have like $1 million in recurring revenue annually, right? And then it's a competition, but then you're already up and running. So there's no need to be paranoid. I also wanted to touch quickly on patents for software, especially for apps and software. I just, my co-founder Sid came across a great podcast. I hate podcasts; it's just like too long for me. But I like it. But I've listened to it. It was 15 minutes. That only 3 minutes were really, really useful. But I'm gonna quote him for you. So there were two Silicon Valley veterans who are serial entrepreneurs turned VCs. And they basically, somebody asked them, like, how do you go about patenting for software? So software, I put apps in the same bucket, of course, right, as software in this case. And they said, absolutely not. Not only we say that it's not worth your time and money, we actually adamantly advise against it. So it's not my word, it's there. So I'm going to quickly say why. So they said, first of all, by patenting, if you do have some trade secret, you have to disclose it. You may be smart about your patent. You can make a layer, so-called layer of defense and so forth, but you still disclose something, and it's not advisable. You're much better off keeping this as a trade secret. Point number two is you're going to change it. Everything is changing. You're changing your software on a weekly basis. You have your sprints, right? You're working with customers. You're learning stuff. So you will obsolete your own patent. So it's just, again, not worth the money and the time and the bandwidth and the disclosure. So that's kind of in a nutshell. So I understand your worry. I respect that. I am very compassionate, but just try to focus on the execution. That's my advice. And Tanya, are we on the same page here?
We are 100% on the same page.
Woo.
And I hear this all the time. And your idea is going to do nothing in your head. You need to get it out of your head and out into the world. It's all about the execution and not about the idea. Agreed, 100%. Thank you for being with me on that, Alex. Great. Yep. So we have another question, and it looks like it's from Ray. So if it's a pure SaaS that you're starting, you may not have much to protect, he says, but you can always fill out a provisional patent for a small amount of money. If you are that paranoid, it will cost you about $300 and it gives you a year to figure it out. Okay, no one's gonna sign an NDA, agreed. All right, comment. So another question we have here is from Green Fox Events that says, every time you make a pitch, can you execute an NDA? Question was answered. Do you agree with that, Alex, about the NDAs?
You can, but it's not advisable at all, because there's one thing, keep in mind, investors typically do not sign NDAs, especially right. VCs. And the reason for that is because they see so many pitches from so many different entrepreneurs that it's possible that they already heard pitch like yours. They don't want to expose themselves into a liability.
Yeah. Agreed. I know just myself, I hear so many pitches, thousands of pitches every year. And I've even had where students will say, hey, that was my idea. And I said, yes, it was your idea and maybe 10 other students' ideas. You'd be surprised how many people have the exact same idea that you have. It's all about who can execute on it, who can actually make it happen.
Yeah, the only place I know that value ideas is Hollywood.
Is Hollywood. Yeah.
Yeah, they always say, you always have this guy who drinks a beer, like maybe smokes a joint and says, oh, I had this idea. So what?
Who cares, right? Love it. Okay, great. So any other questions from the audience?
I've got a follow-up question on that.
Okay.
Hey, Martin, sure.
Go ahead,
All
Martin.
right. Yeah. So I know patents, especially software patents, are just useless. But how about design, copyright, design, that sort of thing? User interfaces? Is there any way
So
to
I have to step in. Software patents are not useless, please.
No, they're not.
Problem is, no, that was stated twice. So the problem is that software patents may not give you protection that you want. That's the problem.
But
So
they
for the
are not
price you pay, but they're not useless. So please, okay, be careful of that. What I'll say, if you really want, like I said, file a provisional. But software patents are hard because the workaround is easy. That's really what the issue is there. Okay. But
So Ray, so one is I was quoting the podcast that I'm happy to share with you. And I think what you just said is you said in different words that they're useless, but just, with respect to patent law. So yeah, if they're easy to work around, if they don't give you protection.
Well, but here's the deal. I want you to understand this. The 5 patents we used in Qualcomm against Apple were all software patents. All. Just so you know, we were a hardware company. So think about that.
They do have. They definitely.
I know, Ray, but using Qualcomm and Apple as an example is just, I don't think it's appropriate here, right? We're small startups. You got to think as a startup.
What I'm
right?
saying
without going down that rabbit hole.
I don't want to. I'm going to shut up. I'm just saying, please be careful. Don't turn everybody off to patents because it's not always a good idea.
Not
Because
at all.
I'll tell you, at TCA, we do look at that. If you don't have a patent, we're going to ask you why.
I was going to say there are uses for patents. It's almost like when a doctor prescribes something off-label. I feel like patents have off-label uses. They are really good at making some people feel good. Certain investors love to see them, whether or not they're doing what they're intended to do. And there are many other uses for them. But we're going off topic. I feel like I want to answer.
Look, just as a disclaimer, I personally have 15 patents. My first startup that I've been acquired, one of the reasons, not the key reason, but one of the reasons was our patent portfolio. So I do patents, right? It's just in this context of the app.
Agreed. So back to Martin's question. I think he was asking about user interface and design. And,
So Martin, thank you for the question. I am in no means an IP expert at all, right? So again, if you just think about this, like design patents are notoriously much weaker. Copyright gives you something and it's easy to do, right? But again, it's pretty weak, right? So like if you became a #1 place in the world consumers go to for a particular reason, you absolutely must protect your brand, right? But because you're a startup and nobody cares about you, and you're gonna change your UI, your app and whatever look and feel, 20, 30 times or whatever, right? It's just not worth for you to now to do this work. As you grow, as you start generating revenue, as you have brand recognition, you absolutely have to do it. So I am with Ray there that, once you grow in a direction, start growing in the direction of Qualcomm, you're thinking about raising capital from VCs. Yeah, I mean, you can invest, you can get a solid, good quality patent attorney who would craft you a provisional patent for just $1,000, right? And you have a year for this, and you can create a nice little patent portfolio, right? And go pitch to VCs. And if they ask you, say, yeah, I got a patent portfolio, right? They dig deeper, they know it's provisional, but everybody knows that. So that's the game. But early on, you need to focus your unless you have something like really like an algorithm. Even algorithms are very hard to, like, if you have a system, like strongest patents are system.
Agreed.
Then, you know, system method method is a little bit weaker. So if you can create a pattern for a system where you have like a particular thing sitting in the cloud that in every app in the world, it's actually sitting in the front end and you push it in the cloud, or vice versa. If you found a way to implement something that is usually so heavy in the calculation sitting in the cloud, you brought it to the phone and it doesn't drain up the phone and it like works very, very fast, like lightning fast. And this is your key thing. Then you should pattern it again very carefully without actually revealing your trade secret, right? In some different ways. You would need a good patent attorney. But otherwise, you know, for generic type of app, I don't think it's worth it.
And I'll say this too about design. You do want to make sure that you have the rights to the design. That's one thing that I've seen. You know, a lot of inexperienced entrepreneurs will just, you know, they'll pay for, you know, they'll pay for a cheap logo or something with absolutely no rights to it, and that can get you into trouble. And that's just it can be easily fixed with a contract, just kind of spelling it out. But yeah. So I saw there were some more questions in there. Let's see. It was from Raj. It looks like. Oh no! First, Enzo had a question. So how early, Alex, can you find a VC if your objective is to establish a relationship? So is pre-revenue too early? Yeah. And
so
yeah.
one of the great things is a networking event. Again, I'm thinking in terms of pre-COVID, of course, but now, you know, like they allow you actually to, there's new things popping up that allow you to do like breakout rooms and so forth, right? So if you get a warm intro, you know, VCs maybe now bored out of their mind, sitting in their homes. Maybe you get lucky to get 15, 20 minutes kind of FaceTime over Zoom with a VC and have a little chat. But you need to think very, very carefully of this craft of emails and communication. You know, you need to send them something very, very brief, very short, which will pique their interest, right? After the warm intro. So warm intro first, hey, you know, check out this guy. He's doing something that you might be interested in. You say, hey, like I'm happy to meet here. And you give them just 1 or 2 liners, a little short paragraph. And it's basically, it's like a sales pitch. You tell them something about yourself. Of course, you need to give them to tell them about them if you're smart, right? Go on their LinkedIn profile, you say, hi, I mean, I love like what you did there or what you did here. Now there's like, you know, Salesforce always say, I love what you're doing here. It's like kind of a canned thing. Yeah. Try to put something concrete, right? Send them something. I love how you do, you know, the product you've developed, I used it. So like personal connection. Then you drop a little paragraph about you, very, very short. And you say like, would you like to hear more? And if the person say, yeah, it's interesting, tell me more. And then, so basically every little email, it's a permission to give more information. Don't shove your deck down their throat. That's a really bad idea. And by the way, deck is something that creates a barrier between you and an investor. You know, you should not show your deck for as long as you can. And I've raised money from investors. I never showed my deck and it was great.
Good, nice, yeah. That pitch deck, it's a card in the pocket. Keep it in there. And I was going to say too, just to add one extra thing, there is anytime you have some kind of a mutual connection, that's your best bet. That's going to get you more than anything else. And there's Greg Anderson always says, you know, you wouldn't ask somebody to marry you on the first date. Be careful what you're asking of people on the very first time you meet them. Don't just, you know, I want it all, right? Just kind of ease into the relationship. So, yeah.
Oh, I want to say something else. So there's a great quote that, you know, I've used like on a daily basis. Mm-hmm. You want money, ask for advice. You want advice, ask for money. So meaning that never ask people for money.
Yeah, right.
All you're going to get is advice, right?
I love
Ask them for advice. They want to be part of your journey. You know, everybody wants support everybody. I am enjoying the fact that you're asking me questions. It makes me feel important. It makes me feel smart, you know.
Yeah, I love that. I forgot that quote. I'm going to use that again. I love it. So there's one more question. I think we have time. We're almost out of time, but we have one more question in the chat. And it was from Raj, who asked about whether or not, Alex, you've had any personal experience with business loans. And why do so few companies pursue them? Well, I can tell you that. Or are they common among businesses, but not well known by the public? I'll let you answer this. Go ahead.
Yeah, so as I said, you know, Oh, I got the COVID loan, you know, like $3,000 or something from my startup, but like everybody else. But otherwise, so I don't consider this a business loan; it's a government loan. But otherwise, as I said, I don't have experience. I get bombarded like literally on a you know, every week I get like 3, 4, 5 emails and LinkedIn. You know, people reached via LinkedIn and offering me money. So it's like, you know, people when I don't disrespect any profession, by the way, right? But there are professions with people when they're desperate, you know, like becoming a realtor sometimes, you know, something that where you can actually you feel that you can make money even though it's very, very competitive. And same thing comes to being a mortgage broker, and now it's a business loan broker, right? Apparently there are some sources of capital that just you know, pay well if you know, to these brokers, and they just try to do it. So I am not advocating against them. I'm not advocating for them. I'm just making you aware that such option exists. Unfortunately, I don't have any personal experience with them. You got to keep in mind every loan comes with an interest rate. An interest rate actually adds up pretty quickly because I've had what I did. You know, I had a convertible note with a pretty high interest, with 8% interest. And when I was exiting, I wasn't surprised because I know my math and my accounting, but you know, it was not insignificant amount went to pay interest to my holders of the convertible note. I understand it's like not answering the question, but
well,
I don't
no,
have a personal
there are very, and also, I mean, you're never going to get a business loan with just an idea, right? This is one of those misconceptions that I see a lot as an educator. People will come in and say, oh, I've got this great idea. Now I'm going to go to the bank and get a loan. I'll just get my business plan together and there'll be a loan. That doesn't exist, right? That's not real. You need to show traction. You need to show that you've been earning money. And then, but I will say right now, there are more grants out there than I've ever seen, you know, in my lifetime. And there are, and some of these grants are for loans without interest or, you know, other things. So there are things out there that aren't common right now because of COVID. So we might want to take advantage of those. So I think we're out of time. I would love to, with that, have Alex maybe take it out and anything you want to share with the audience.
Well, no, thank you for questions, guys. You know, I hope it was helpful to you. I understand that it didn't go like really in the deep details and like tactical stuff, but you know, I thought of a few tips. I thought that they're helpful.
Absolutely, extremely helpful. I appreciate it. I did want to, sorry, I didn't mean to share that. I was going to say, if at the end, maybe we could take a photo if any of you want to be in the photo together. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording here. And thank you, Alex. Thank you everyone for attending. And